Okay, moving on in our discussion of homicide related to cult activity, want to briefly mention the work of Singer, Cults in Our Midst, a very useful book published back in 2003 by Jossie Bass Publishers. Singer points out that it's important to look at the origin and role of the leader and really, are they on a mission or do they simply want power for power's sake in a domineering fashion, or do they tend to focus just on themselves and their own, attempt to benefit themselves? And look at the power structure and also the methods of persuasion that are used to convince others to join or to in fact, engage in violent criminal behavior. If we look at Singer's discussion of thought reform of those that get recruited into cults, for example, we see that there's often an attempt to make the person unaware of changes taking place and also to begin to control and structure the person's time and environment so everything's kind of taken care of and expected, and to also create among the individual and among the small group a sense of cohesion, but also a sense of powerlessness, fear, and also dependency, and an attempt to eradicate or suppress the person's previous behaviors and attitudes and bring new behaviors and attitudes into the person's self, and help them create a new construction of logic related to the group. And so Singer talks about exit counselors' history in trying to help people actually get out of cults or groups that they're involved in that engage in violent activities and can be dangerous. For example, Singer looks at the length of membership, the location, the name of the cult, the leader's name, other agencies that are involved and people consulted, the family's desired changes, especially when this involves minors, and also other actions related to contacting the group and interactions between family members and the cult member. And so that's another area, and there's actually specialists who attempt to deprogram, as they say, the cult member. But I think what's also important and sometimes helpful to view cults as countercultures, as Zellner does. For example, counterculture is kind of against the mainstream culture. The hippies would be an example of a counterculture, the hippies from the 60s. Certainly not dangerous and and intended to be not non-violent. I mean, obviously, if a hippie was smoking some marijuana and driving a car, that could be dangerous. But for the most part, the hippies were a peaceful group that were very much against war and focused on love and sex and rock and roll, I guess. But let's go back to viewing cults as countercultures, and Zellner's work really asks, first of all, where did this Satanism scare originate, and what data do we actually have that it's there? There's actually a hoax with a big organization, and they lost millions due to false allegations that they were connected to Satanism. And so there's a huge debate that's been going on for years now whether or not there's actually these cases of satanic groups that operate and breed and kill babies and sacrifice their members or strangers and engage in these types of violent behaviors. People argue about this and debate. A lot will say, well, where's the actual forensic evidence? Where are the actual cases? Where are the bodies buried? Where are the missing people? While others would say the cults have been very successful in keeping things secret and unknown to the general public and investigators. So there's still a big debate about this. I can't really tell you one way or the other, except to tell you there's a big debate. And that's my view on this. Although I do recommend using the scripting analysis to look at the why, who, what, when, where, and how when it comes to trying to determine if there's any cult activity or not. And I think really what I'd mention as a final case study would be ritual child sexual abuse, where there's some kind of rituals involved with the sexual abuse of a child or children that may involve satanic type elements. And for example, Weir and Wheatcroft, in their article in Child Abuse and Neglect, Allegations of Children's Involvement in Ritual Sexual Abuse, talk about how to organize the analysis to look at, first of all, the conclusions of the Child Sexual Abuse CSA or the RSA, Ritual Sexual Abuse Assessment, what actually is alleged to have happened, and also look at the age and gender of the child and the nature of the allegations made by the child. Certainly a child may make some statements that we can begin to see if there's evidence. For example, if a child was physically hurt, we would see recently physically hurt, we would see the injury, or perhaps we would see scarring, and also look at the sexualized behavior that occurred and the circumstances which increased the risk of abuse related to the family dynamics and community aspects, and look for also specific signs and symptoms, post-traumatic stress disorder, depression, headaches, eating problems, and the like, and then also look at whether or not forensic or medical evidence is practiced. Is presented, and also if there's certain factors that increase the risk of false allegations. So again, we have a huge amount of debate. So I can tell you that, for example, in order to obtain mental health counselor's insurance, there's a couple boxes that are on the form that ask, do you have any cases of ritual child sexual abuse, and do you have any cases of, I think, recovered memories? And I think they're there because insurance companies want to know, because it's high-risk areas of practice for liability. So I think what we can say here is that an investigator or researcher needs to really carefully assess the accuracy of the information and put this into a framework, recognizing the influence of the current time and situation. Even recently, when we look at the politics that goes on, I've seen cases where certain politicians are allegedly belonging to a cult, as they would say, and it's used for one primary purpose, and that's political aspects, because that's viewed negatively by a large proportion of society. But then I would say, well, what exactly is a cult? In the first video, I did not define it, and I still am not defining that. But I think in any investigation on a specific case, it's important to outline the boundaries of what is and is not a cult under your definition, and what is or is not considered to be ritualized behavior, either homicide or sexual behavior. And this wraps up this video.